Here's how pirates actually turned seawater into something they could drink. It's the Golden Age of Piracy, and your life on the seven seas has just begun. Your ship is hundreds of miles from the land, the sun is beating down, and even though you're surrounded by water, you can't drink any of it. But that doesn't mean the pirates were doomed to die on the open sea. Pirates had figured out a tech tree, and we'll show you the method that actually turned seawater into drinkable water, and why it was usually a last resort. And just like any good tech tree, you don't unlock everything at once. It all starts with the basics, preparation and stockpiling. Then it moves into opportunistic upgrades, riskier tactics, and finally emergency-only abilities that you hope you never have to use. And the further down the tree you're forced to go, the worse your situation already is. If you are boiling seawater on a pirate ship, you did not plan well. You didn't get unlucky and you didn't win the logistics game. You are improvising to survive. Despite Earth being made up of 71% water, only 3.5% of it is drinkable. If you were able to extract all the salt from the oceans and then lay it across all the land, the salt deposits would be over 500 feet high. That is a little under half the height of the Empire State Building. If you decide to drink salt water, not only will your cells take in the water, they'll also take in the salt. A little sodium chloride is good for you, but too much will wreak havoc on your kidneys. Constant urination to curb the excess salt in your body will cause you to die a horrific death from dehydration. In the process of said death, you can expect symptoms like nausea, vomiting, hallucinations, seizures, and likely eventually falling into a coma. Let's start on our tech tree. Because for starters, one of the most important parts of pirate life is preparation while you're still on shore. Water was such a valuable commodity on the ship in the Golden Age of Piracy that if you took more than your fair share, it wouldn't go down well with the rest of the crew. One old record from Captain Edward Cook in 1709 said that 2 crew members were whipped and pickled for water theft. This is where rationing enters the tech tree, not as a clever trick but as a necessity. Once you're at sea, every drop of water already has an expiration date. Rationing is the mechanic that decides how fast the timer counts down. Daily water allowances were controlled, often measured out by the officer of the watch, and cutting rations was one of the first signs that a voyage was going sideways. So on the first phase of our tech tree, we've got legally obtaining casks of water to keep below deck. But that's easier said than done. A surprising amount of math goes into being a pirate, and every captain would need to consider a bunch of factors when it came to how much water they need to stock. Every cask of water you're holding below deck is less space for something else. On top of that, whether you're chasing your prey on the high seas or desperately trying to escape from a legion of Navy ships, you don't want to carry extra weight that you don't need. But it came with risks. Rationing could stretch a supply, but less water meant weaker crew members, slower work, more mistakes, and shorter tempers. Push it too far and discipline starts to break down. Push it even further and mutiny becomes a real risk. Rationing wasn't just about survival, it was a balancing act between keeping the ship moving and keeping the crew functional enough to fight, sail, and obey orders. How many casks would you need to bring on? Let's take a real voyage as an example. A 6,600-mile journey from Britain to Surat, India, traveling at an average of 5 knots an hour will take around 240 days, the better part of a year. While you would thankfully have plenty of opportunities to go to port and restock your supplies, you'd also need to plan for the absolute worst-case scenario. And this meant stocking about half a gallon of water per crew member per day. On the larger end of ships, such as a galleon, that could mean water for 200 to 400 crew members. Barrels containing liquids were specially designed wet casks, because if they didn't have the structural integrity and they sprung a leak, you might find yourself going thirsty. Keeping the wet cask sealed was such an important task that ships would keep a cooper on staff or a cask maker and repairer, and this was vital to live. When storms hit, the boats were tossed around. Coopers could also employ techniques like charring the inside of the barrels, covering the inside of the barrels in activated charcoal. This could have antibacterial effects that made the water last longer. More on why that's so important later. And rationing was just the easy part. Of course, this sends us to the next branch on the tech tree. You've got the casks, you've got the cooper. But unless you're hoping to rely on rain, water doesn't just appear out of thin air. How can you actually procure enough drinkable fresh water to fill your hundreds of casks and satisfy you and the rest of the exhausted, thirsty crew? Well, one option actually was just waiting for the water to materialize out of thin air during storms, during which pirates did literally everything they could to collect rainwater. The problem with relying on this method alone is that, to put it simply, it's unreliable. You can't guarantee rain with any degree of consistency unless you are somehow sailing across England. So while you should definitely make the best of it, if it does rain, you don't count on it. Then there's doing things the lawful way, buying the water. But there's a problem with that. Ports run by the Royal Navy are basically a no-go for pirates. Some ports are welcoming to pirates, and they'll happily sell them water. The problem is they know how limited the options are for those pirates, so they're liable to increase their prices to take advantage of the lack of options. Given that you don't want to spend the lion's share of your ill-gotten gains just being able to drink the water, you could see why this might not be an attractive option. There's also the natural way. Pirates were masters of the sea, and they knew how to follow birds to fresh water sources. And while treasure maps were certainly coveted, you'd be even luckier to come upon a map to a spring on some deserted island that only you and a handful of other seafarers knew about. Now, you're out of safe choices. And that is where the pirates stopped asking for water. They would use a technique so diabolical and so effective that it's part of pirating legend. Why risk going out of your element stealing water from friendly or worse hostile ports when you could just steal the water from other boats instead? In the tech tree, this is a powerful but dangerous unlock. Stealing water doesn't just refill your meters, it drains someone else's completely. It's fast, it's efficient, and it's effective, but it comes with consequences: retaliation, reputation, and the knowledge that you are condemning another crew to the same desperation that you are trying to avoid. It's a myth that pirates slaughtered everyone on the ships they robbed. It happened, of course it did, but if the pirates could take your stuff without a struggle and save themselves the gunpowder, they would happily take that option. But if you were a merchant ship at sea and a pirate ship appeared and took your cargo and your water, your fate was usually sealed, unless sheer luck put a sympathetic ship in your path. But stretching water only works if the crew holds together, and that brings us to the next angle of attack on the war against dehydration in our tech tree: alcohol. But that came with its own set of problems. Alcohol without moderation can leave you a lot more dehydrated and generally hungover than drinking nothing at all. But given that casks of water sitting for days, weeks, or even months could turn stagnant and filthy, and in tropical waters could even swarm with mosquito larvae, pirates had to get creative when it came to alternative liquids. Alcohol had the practical advantage of lasting far longer than clean fresh water. Most ships stocked weak beer so the crew wouldn't get too drunk. But beyond that, things got interesting. In tech tree terms, alcohol isn't a replacement for water, it's a modifier. Rum could be added to water supplies in order to make it go further, with the high-proof alcohol killing off the worst of the bacteria. Mixed correctly, it slows spoilage, makes rationed water safer to drink, and it stretches limited supplies just a little longer. Used incorrectly, it accelerates dehydration and pushes the crew closer to collapse. It's a risky upgrade that only works if discipline holds. And this is where things start to get dangerous on the pirate hydration tech tree: distillation. Everything up to this point was about avoiding this. This, in effect, involved boiling up the water to evaporate it and separate it from the salt deposits within, before cooling the evaporated water to get it back into its drinkable liquid state. You could build a crude distillation setup using equipment already on board, a metal pot or a kettle to boil the seawater, and use a lid to trap the steam. A length of tubing would be angled away from the heat so the vapor could cool and condense. That condensed steam, now fresh water, would drip into another container, leaving most of the salt behind. And it worked. Just. There were a few problems. First, fuel. Boiling seawater takes a lot of energy, and ships don't have the fuel to spare. Firewood was limited, charcoal was valuable. Every cup of distilled water comes at the cost of something else that you would need just as badly. Then there's scale. The setups could only produce a small amount at a time. Even running constantly, the amount of water produced might keep 1 or 2 people alive, not a full crew. Trying to scale it up meant larger fires, heavier equipment, and more risk. Which leads to a third problem: fire. Open flames on a wooden ship coated in pitch, tar, and gunpowder aren't exactly a dream scenario. One spark in the wrong place could turn the entire vessel into a funeral pyre. Captains were wary to allow fires below deck unless there was no alternative. And the problems kept coming. Distillation didn't just require heat, it produced smoke and steam. On a calm day, a column of smoke rising from a ship could be seen for miles across the open water. Even steam venting from a makeshift still wasn't subtle. Anything that breaks the horizon draws attention. And that was dangerous. Trying to get water could also signal your position to rival crews, merchant ships trying to avoid you, or worse, naval patrols. And it wasn't just the enemy that you had to worry about. Running a still meant dedicating crew members to tending the fire, managing the equipment, and watching for sparks or leaks. That was time and manpower not spent on lookout duty, sail handling, or defense. In desperate situations, pirates were forced to choose between making water and staying alert. By the time you reach distillation, the rest of the tech tree has failed you. You couldn't steal enough, it didn't rain, the alcohol ran out or just made things worse, rations hit rock bottom. Distillation isn't progress, it's damage control. And it was a last resort for a reason. Sure, it worked in theory, but at that point survival was no longer a question of skill, just time. Now check out the most feared pirate in the world, Blackbeard. Or watch this instead.